Let's start going through now what it's like being under a slave trade industry of ACC and the New Zealand government and all its vigilantism, lynch mob, abusive, threatening, intimidating, violent mentalities, lack of medical treatment, lack of communication, lack of interaction, the singling out, the isolation, the alienation of victims, the abusing all their laws and all their legislation and all the rights of a victim, abusing human rights of a victim, abusing privacy rights of a victim, abusing lawful rights of a victim, abusing legislative rights of a victim, abusing the health and well-being of a victim, destroying medical notes, destroying medical files, destroying ACC notes, ACC files, attacking the victim in every way you possibly can. So you get through all that, and all their kidnapping and all their declare active war actions, and you don't have any rights for you and you. Well, what have you got to look forward to? Living all their negativities every fucking day without an ounce of medical or treatment needs, without having proper investigations done on your injuries, without having any injuries addressed. They were attacking you for injuries you didn't have, because they invented their own brain injury and mental illness and then attacked my life that way. Then left me with post-traumatic stress. But when they left me with post-traumatic stress, they didn't do any investigations. So this is what I mean about these people going out and attacking people and holding them in a Mexican standoff, criminally to blackmail and ransom at all times, and nobody's answering fuck all, because these lawyers are all fucking criminals. The cabinet of ministers, they're also criminals. So are the ombudsmen, and so is the New Zealand Police, and your Crown Law Office, and your Human Rights Commission, your Health and Disability Commission, and your Privacy Commission. Because ACC is not answerable to anybody but themselves. The victims are answerable to them for everything they do in their life, because everything the victim has is restricted, and it's placed in a situation to where it is restricted in every way, shape and form. And all these people want to do is wear you down until they completely own your fucking life, and then expect you to take their bullshit and not retaliate. They expect to carry out their active war actions, and they think the only thing they have to say is, oh, you're getting what you're entitled to. 20 years later, when they have starved you of all your medical and treatment needs and all your rehabilitation, and to be treated as a human being. You're not treated as a human being in New Zealand. You're treated as a fucking slave. Your life is treated as a product, and they're not restoring you to the best you can be, as stated in their legislation they're supposed to. They don't have rehabilitation plans, they don't negotiate them with you, they don't discuss them with you. They just write it in there because the law says they have to have one, and they're not interested in discussing it or negotiating it. And then they'll use it in a court of law and say, we've got a rehabilitation plan. But the rehabilitation plan means fuck all, because it's not even a rehabilitation plan, it's just a load of shit. And none of your injuries are written on the rehabilitation plan, none of their treatment needs are written on a rehabilitation plan, none of the lines of address are written on a rehabilitation plan. Nothing is. So you ask for a fully comprehensive rehabilitation plan, the only thing they have to write on it is some load of bullshit, like right down physio or something like that. That's not a rehabilitation plan, but that's how this organized, criminal-run organization works. Because the entire law and legislation is the biggest load of shite, and the people running it are criminals. So, let me get to the point. What are you left with? They create all this distress and all this trauma and all this torment and torture and frustration in your life. They single you out, they isolate you, they alienate you. When they tell you that prove it, prove it, prove it, prove it, prove it, prove it. You have to prove everything at your expense. It's all criminal blackmail and the sex and be the crimes. These people then create all these conflicts. You're dealing with a million different departments at the same time. Nobody's doing their job. Nobody's answering anything. They all shut up shop. And literally build walls, barriers, fences and obstacles. And So, what are they actually telling you? They're actually telling you, fix your own fucking injuries. At one point I was told to go back to the UK and get free medical treatment. But it's still the same process. All they want to do is spoon feed you shite after causing you all these injuries and taking out and destroying your entire quality of life. And keeping you as a fucking slave trade for 20 odd years. And they want to get away with our crimes. Well, it's not as easy said and done when you've got family and kids and everything else, but the kids have also suffered because of the impacts they've had on a family's life. It impacts on your friendships, it impacts on your quality of life, it impacts on everything. So these people are not just destroying you, they're destroying everything in your life. And they're making it as difficult as possible. And they're literally doing it from behind closed door under a secret service action. They use false names for all the people that they employ to deal with you. They abuse the privacy rights through that action because you can't collect any information what people are doing. They're literally holding you criminally to blackmail ransom so they can wear you down till you fuck all left, and then they just want to spoon feed you shit and place the onus on the victim to take public-private criminal prosecutions or sue them at their own expense. And suing them in the public-private criminal prosecutions, you're going to lose millions out of it, because the entire justice system of New Zealand is run by organised criminals. So what are you left with? You're left with a fucking death sentence. You're left held criminally to blackmail and ransom at all times. You're held in Mexican standoffs at all times. And the people running it know the crimes that they're committing because they know the law inside fucking out. They knew how to abuse me and abuse their power by trying to allege I had a brain injury and a mental illness that proved that I didn't have. But it wouldn't have took a rocket scientist for me to prove that I didn't have a brain injury or a mental illness. And you could see that just by looking at me. I wasn't aggressive, threatening, intimidating, or violent in any way, shape, or form. But I was being accused of it for that purpose, while I was being stalked, harassed, criminally harassed by private investigators and security guards and their staff and their management and everything else. So, and then they wanted to deal with a third party, which was David Hepburn, who obviously has lied to me in more ways than one. And you get to discover one lie after another lie after another lie after another lie. You get to realise that he's done them more favours than he's actually done myself, you know. But the bottom line is, what are you left with? You're left with a life of hell, going nowhere, achieving nothing, and they just want you to survive under their slave trade fucking actions. And it's going to get harder and harder and harder and harder the older you get, the longer it goes on. So you're left where you're going to have to end it one way or the other. I've never been one for suicide, but I suppose suicide murder is always a possibility in this case, because it was declared an act of war against me, and all the violence in this case was instigated by them. And when they instigate fear and violence, they're never investigated for their own behaviours, their own attitudes. They're never given any psychiatric evaluations for their crimes. They accuse someone of something, and that is taken as fact. Without any investigation of any kind, the victim is literally being attacked. That's how it works. And that's why you end up with last resorts, people. You end up with last resorts because the people in positions of power are terrorists. They are mafia bosses, they are gangsters, and they're more interested in covering up their own crimes so long as they can keep control of their victim's life and continue to make $1 billion a year profit, and claim they're running a rehabilitation organisation that they're actually not even running. They have no hospitals, they've got no proper medical care. Everything is contracted out. And literally people are then paid to fuck over every victim they can. It's the biggest victimizing enterprise you'll ever come across. Doctors don't know how to be doctors. Medical experts, let me see, I think I could psychoanalyze a psychiatrist better than they could me. They're all fucking idiots. They sit there and they ask the stupidest fucking questions. They'll ask you the same question in every 20 different ways and expect you to answer it fucking differently. They're that fucking stupid. And they're getting paid tens of thousands of dollars to do that shit. You know, the thing that pisses me off about psychiatrists is that there's not one fact or foundation behind their mentalities or their psychology or anything else. I think psychiatry is the biggest load of shit when it comes to doing a job for government anyway. I think more people who are more depressed and stuff like that, which I never was. I was always an easygoing, very confident person. Very confident in everything that I did and everything that I talked about. And I think they couldn't handle that. They tried to label me as maybe narcissistic because I was so confident. They had to try and label me some way. They just try and label you any way they can. But this is how these people work. At the end of the day, what am I left with? What? The air that I breathe, the injuries that I still have that are never going to be treated, never going to be rehabilitated. They've taken everything I've got, tying my life up in all their legal and political garbage. But throughout that, I've always tried to be a good person for other people. And I've tried not to burden other people with all my shit. To be perfectly frank, I've never had the right people to actually help me in this case. So that's the other part of the problem, and all the anger and frustration that you go through, all the torment and all the torture that you go through. You wake up every day, it's the same shit. Same shit, different day. And then what you have is these people all hiding away, claiming to be running a rehabilitation organization that not an ounce of rehabilitation has been offered. Haven't had a meeting for 13 years because everybody says, oh, there's no point in having a meeting. Why the fuck are you running rehabilitation? There's no point in having a meeting. You can't get an answer to any question that you ask. So you're only left with last resource people if the government doesn't call for a Royal Commission of Inquiry and doesn't uphold its end of the fucking bargain. And if it doesn't, then they haven't been doing it. They're guilty of misfeasance in public office for not doing it. And literally, as far as I'm concerned, their intention is murderous. And I don't know any victim that's going to sit there and fucking take it, laying down, when the government's committing so many crimes against you. So I would just say that I think we have reached the point of the government needs to make a final decision on whether they want this case to end in murderous outcomes or whether they want it to end in justice outcomes. Now, I suppose murder on my part would be justice anyway, because these fuckers do not deserve to be walking this planet. And that's not a threat to them. I'm quite willing to let this all be addressed through a Royal Commission of Inquiry. And I'm quite willing to do it as long as I'm not under their controls. And my life is removed from ACC completely. And that I'm in a position to take care of my injuries, free of all these terrorists who've done this harm to my life. Now, I'm quite willing to do that. And I can forgive people when I am not under their controls any longer and all the issues have been addressed. I can forgive people when their violence and their abuse and their threats and all their actions stop. Right? I know I can forgive people. But there'll be no forgiveness until my life is out of their controls. So, there's the bottom line. The government needs to come up with an answer. If the government doesn't come up with an answer, this ends in a last resort, and then the government's guilty of murder. Simple as that. Or attempted murder. I don't give a fuck which one it turns out to be. But that's the bottom line. That's not a threat, that's a fucking reality. I am not going out of this world without any justice and accountability. And I am not going to be held prisoner, fucking hostage and captive, criminally to blackmail and ransom, starved of all my rights, entitlements, rehabilitation, medical treatment needs, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, defrauded then by the tax office on top of that. These things aren't going to stand in my way anymore. I couldn't give a fuck. Right? To these people, money is fucking their god, and you need money to survive. It's just one of the flaws of life. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to be taking this land down. McGreevy has placed everyone in his dangers because their intent is murderous. The intent on that bastard was always murderous. And then he tries to turn himself into a victim, and everybody then tries to help him. And they've spent 20 years destroying my life. Now, if I kidnapped you for 20 years, and I spoon-fed you shit in a kidnap situation, in a malicious, criminal, abusive, violent situation, in a country that you've never lived in before in your life, and I went out to destroy your family and your friends and your quality of life and your way of life, I don't think he would think any differently to how I'm thinking. And it's taken me a long time to get to this point, but this is what this terrorist has always worked out. I hate these Moses, but they're real. So that's really the bottom line for me, people. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, her decision when I get back to NZ is the last decision I want to see. And whatever her decision is exactly the one I will adhere to. Now, I'm open to discussing my case with anybody who wants to sit down and discuss it in an open, just, fair and reasonable, frank manner. But I'm not going to discuss it with somebody who's going to sit there and fucking play mind games and talk shit and not have an answer to any question, or who's going to sit and plead ignorant, denial, refusal and excuse. I'm not going to do that shit. I'm going in there to be perfectly honest. I'm an open book. Everybody now knows I'm an open book, and I don't hide my feelings, my emotions or my sanity. So I wasn't always an open book. I like my privacy. But once my anonymity was taken away from me by the same terrorists who did this to me on the internet, then it was a fucking open book. So once they opened that book, then I opened my fucking book. And I'm going to keep opening my book until this ends one way or the other. So you all know exactly where I stand. You can all fucking think what you like of me. You can all say, oh, he's fucking mad. There's fuck all mad about me. When you're in a prisoner hostage captive, criminally blackmailing, holding to ransom situation, and your life's going backward, and you're getting older, and you've spent 20 years fighting these animals, then you can tell me what it feels like. But these people are not getting away with this anymore. There has to be an end to it. I can't keep living this shit. And I don't see the point in having a fucking life of hell under the controls of my abusers, my attackers, and my kidnappers. Well, at the end of the day, if this case ends in violence, then the Prime Minister and her entire cabinet and all the people involved will be charged with murder. Because that was always their criminal intent. Right? And this is always where they wanted to push this to. This is how they destroy their victims' lives. They do not want me being heard in any arena. They want to control everything through their corrupt kangaroo justice system, while they do everything in secrecy behind the victim's back. And they control the entire life and fate of their victim under their slave trade actions. New Zealand runs slavery, and it's about time the fucking world knew it. So, try telling that to the United Nations and the rest of the world, Jacinda. Because if you don't call for a Royal Commission of Inquiry, you're going to get charged with murder by the end of this case.